welcome to Writer to Writer. I'm your host, Kat Filer, also known as KJ Filer. My guest today is award-winning novelist and option screenwriter Dave Buzan. Dave has had work published in American Cinematographer, Film Score Monthly, This Week Magazine, among others. He is a graduate of Vancouver Film School. He also holds a Bachelor of Science degree in psychology from Liberty University. He and his wife currently reside in Oregon. In the Lair of Legends is his debut novel. Hi, Dave. How are you doing today?
Good. How are you, Kat?
Good. It's good to see you.
Good to see you.
I have received a number of email requests that I interview you. Readers are in love with the book and hope it's a series.
I am working on the sequel.
Good, because that's the number one question.
Is that right?
Yes, it is.
Wow.
Yeah. You have a hell of a book cover. Did you have any input on that?
I did. I had some particular ideas for the cover, and it honestly took a while to get to the final version. But David King, who did the cover, ended up doing home run on it. So it really represents the character well. It represents the story well. So I'm really happy with it.
Yeah, it's very catchy. And a lot of people have seen your cover. You had a promo in Times Square.
I did, and it happened to be on my birthday, October 13th. So it was on my second birthday, yeah. So it ran 88 times, and it was in conjunction with an award I won through the Historical Fiction Company. So they kind of set it up for me. It was just awesome. So, for an entire day, Jolon Winterhawk was the biggest action hero in New York. So it was fun to see him up there. Yeah.
Did you get a chance to see it in person?
I did not. I didn't. But when the sequel comes out, and if I get to do it for Times Square again, I will definitely be there. Actually, the year before on my birthday, I had a publisher send me we're not going to do your book. Basically the notes were great writing, but no one's ever going to read it. So you won't find an audience for it. It was kind of great the following year exactly to have it on Times Square and to have the book doing so well. So it was very, very nice.
Did you send a picture of the Times Square ad to that publisher with a sort of nani boo boo?
I didn't think it was worth it. No.
No,
No,
of course not. But sometimes just getting feedback is nice, because so much of the time you send something off into the great beyond and you never hear anything back. So
no, I mean, all your queries just go out there, and you're absolutely right.
Yeah. So for listeners who have not read In the Lair of Legends, would you please tell us about the characters and a bit about the plot?
Yeah, it's a Native American Civil War veteran battling a unit of Army traitors and a legendary monster in 1873 Southern Oregon. So it's what I call a genre mishmash. So it's historical fiction, action adventure, and horror.
Okay, well, you're ahead of me on one of my questions, because I was going to ask about that. Librarians and publishers, they just really need to know where these things go, what shelf it's supposed to be on. So what would you say is, and I had not heard horror, so that's good. What would you say is your ideal reader?
The ideal reader would be for historical thrillers. I think that encapsulates pretty much the whole everything about the story. But horror is definitely a component of it, just the monster factor. Yeah. But action adventure, it's so difficult because there's all these different readers that would like it, and I get excited about all the different pieces of it. So I would definitely think historical thrillers is the umbrella that it should be under.
Okay, yeah, I'm looking where the Amazon and wherever it's listed is calling it. They're also throwing in folklore, which I can see that actually, and fantasy. Well, and I think anything like that would be a fantasy, but yeah, I like the idea that it's historical thriller, and I do love that you said something about horror, because I hadn't thought about it, but that's definitely an element. Have there been any surprises about who's actually reading your book, or is it exactly who you wrote it for?
No, absolutely not. I primarily have thought for the horror audience. I just thought it would be like a great, thriller type. That's who I've heard from the least. Though the most feedback I've gotten is from people that consistently say, This is not my genre. This is based on the cover or based on the synopsis, not something I would have read, but it was a word of mouth. This person recommended it and I wanted to read it. And so the feedback I get is how surprising they are that it's a character study and how emotional it is. And I think that's surprising a lot of readers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I do think that cover gets your eye. And then they have, of course, next is to look at the blurb and see if it's something that they would want to read. But yeah, David did a very good job getting people's attention so that it gets picked up. And the reviews are stellar. Tom McCaffrey, best-selling author of the Claire trilogy, says, quote, "The devil is in the details, and Dave Buzan masterfully brings all of those details to bear in creating one hell of a novel." One of your reviewers said you have, quote, "masterfully woven some of the lesser-known history of the Nez Perce throughout the novel, which lends another level of intrigue to an already engrossing novel." So yeah, that's getting some good remarks. Where did you get the idea for the book, and what was research like?
Yeah, as an author, that creative gateway is always the most difficult part of coming up with a story idea. My favorite example of this actually is John Barry, the Oscar-winning film composer. And when he was hired to do Out of Africa, he was struggling. He was struggling to find his way into the picture. And he was remarking that on the second viewing of the work print, at the beginning, there was a scene of Meryl Streep standing at the edge of the train, and she's looking out, and there's something about her face that he just latched onto. And he called that, there it is. That's the gateway into his score. So for me, my gateway was actually at work in October of 2020. I was on a lunch break, and I was reading some news stories. And our local newspaper, the Oregonian, had a story about the Nez Perce reclaiming their land in Oregon after 200 years, which is wonderful, right? But there was a throwaway line in that article. It's just a throwaway, and it said the Nez Perce, there was members that were among the 200,000 Native Americans that served during the Civil War. Well, I shamefully didn't know that part of history. So that immediately piqued my interest, and just a cursory glance into that story led to the genesis of the novel. So I was just completely hooked by a character like that could wear an army uniform with also an allegiance to the tribe, and that dichotomy of who he was, and then add in the factor that he was a husband and a father on top of that. It just gave him a lot of deep resonance to me. Mm-hmm. And that's where it came from. The research itself took me about 3 months before I started writing. There was just a lot of ground to cover, and a lot of what did I want to use and what did I not want to use. And plus, being my debut, it was difficult to start. Where do I start in this story, and how do I do it? So, but the research was paramount. It always is for me. Mm-hmm. The research is foundational. So I just get so much where I think the story is going to go. Research kind of takes me the other way. On the other hand, you can't be totally anchored to it because it is historical fiction. So you have that grace to kind of maneuver around. And this story certainly allowed me to do that.
Yeah. Being where you are, were you able to talk to anybody in person about any of this?
I was able to reach out. I was lucky, very blessed, I should say. In 2017, I was inducted into the Chamawa Indian tribe as an honorary member. Yeah, so my name is White Elk among that tribe. Yeah, so in a way, and years ago, when I was talking to a member of the Chamawa Indian tribe and they found out I was a writer, he had asked me if I would ever write a story, make us the hero. So that kind of stuck in my mind for a couple of years. That wasn't primarily why I wrote this book. It's just something I was focused on, because there hadn't been a Native American hero like this, an indigenous soldier hero. I wanted to make sure there wasn't a white savior of any kind. The hero's him and him alone. He has to save himself and go through the journey himself. And that was just real important to me when creating his character.
Can you speak to the sort of supernatural element? Was this a legend, or is this something you entirely invented?
Well, in Oregon in particular, the Sasquatch is almost like our state animal. And
Yeah.
it's gotten to the point where there's Sasquatch jam, Sasquatch chocolate. Now, you just can't go anywhere without a little fuzzy little guy. So he's almost portrayed, well, he's not almost, he's always portrayed as this docile, kind of friendly person of the forest. But if you just do research into the original Native American legends, particularly up in Alaska and Canada, it's a fearsome creature. It's a protector of the forest. And there's just a lot of legends behind it just being just hugely violent and scary. And that's where I decided to pull this one from. So in my book, the Sasquatch is like the apex predator of the forest. And I just wanted to return it to be scary because I've never seen him represented scary. We only have the Harry and the Hendersons type version of the Sasquatch. And that was a surprise to readers, I think.
You're going to rewrite the whole tourism industry up there.
Oh, right.
I was my husband and I travel the country in our Airstream, and we're gone for months at a time. This is the longest we've been in one place for, oh gosh, I can't even think of. But the last time we were out, we were gone for 8 months, and we ended up in Oregon for quite some time. And we were in Washington State. They have the same love for the Sasquatch. But you're right. It's always some sweet little, you can get bedroom slippers, Sasquatch feet, and all kinds of stuff. But I don't see anybody looking so awesomely horrifying as what's on the front of your book. So yeah, we'll have to
it was good.
that.
I wanted him also the Sasquatch to be subtext for the Native American experience as well, because the subplot is the lumber company kind of encroaching farther and farther into the Sasquatch's home, and basically they're acting out as animals protecting their children and their homestead. And so I just wanted not that Native Americans are portrayed that way, just that we were encroaching the way they're encroaching, and so there's this symbolism there I wanted to invest as well.
Yeah, no, you did it very well. You were featured in Kirkus Review magazine. You won an impressive number of awards, including New York City Book Award. You were a winner for Action Adventure. Firebird Book Award, winner for Best Action Adventure Novel. Historical Fiction Company 5-star award. So yeah, you're definitely hitting all the highs.
Yeah. Yeah, it's such an incredible experience. And what's great about those awards in particular is they're just so diverse, whether it's action, adventure, or historical. So I am proud that it's reaching, multiple different readers and people are enjoying it. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think it's really a good idea. I don't think that anybody is necessarily starting out to write cross genre, but I just think that the whole pigeonholing thing is really only necessary, like I said, for librarians and publishers trying to figure out how to, sell the book or where to park the book or bookstore owners and stuff. But so much of today's fiction is cross genre. And sometimes the audiences do end up being a surprise. So yeah, I've heard from more than one author that they can't believe who's actually reading their book and who actually shows up to a book signing. So that's kind of cool. At least one listener wants to hear, and I quote, "All there is to know in the whole world about Winterhawk and how he came to be."
That's so
I
great.
told him to read the book, and he said there's not enough information in the book. So, is he based on anyone?
He is not based on anyone. In fact, it's interesting. I wrote the epilogue first because I wanted his story to be finished in a certain way. In a way, Winterhawk's story in this book is almost a reverse origin story. So I end the way he always wanted to be, and I start with the way he doesn't want to be. So his whole journey, his whole arc is about duty. And along the way, he finds out that his focus in life is not to a particular country, a particular tribe, it's to his daughter. And once he figures that out, then he's the man he's always wanted to be. And the way she describes him at the end is, he's a farmer, very gentle man. She never saw him pick up a rifle and so on. Certainly not the Winterhawk we're used to, who's rambling on steroids, as a critic had described him in one of the reviews. So I wanted to do an 80s action film on the page. That was my general idea. I wanted the large scale stunts of a Bond film, the Arnold Schwarzenegger quips. I wanted the action of Die Hard and those monsters from Predator, And so putting that character in the middle of all that, how would he, as an 80s action hero, how would he be portrayed and described? And then I just systematically dismantle that throughout the book. So you start out with some, familiar tropes, but I'm always pulling the leg out from those the best I can. So the reader's not sure where this is going. Like,
yeah,
as much as he's righteous and does the right thing at all times, there's some thoughts and deeds that take him off that pedestal. And so I try to make him well-rounded like that. For that reader that asked that wonderful question, I do delve a lot more into it in the sequel in terms of who Winterhawk was before and who he is now. So those will be answered.
Well, he is definitely resonating with readers, and I think that what you're doing with turning him into a human being is, one chapter at a time, is really brilliant, because people have the action hero sort of has an appeal. Everyone wants a hero, okay? But a flawed hero is so much more interesting. Somebody who's, got a backstory or other, motivations and stuff, and maybe not 100%, a hero all the time. So yeah, that's
does someone have doubts? There's a point in the novel where he's trying to convince himself to run away, not out of fear, but he's like, this isn't my war. I don't care anymore. I just want to go home. But it's that sense of duty and honor that propels him forward. Yeah, and the original Die Hard was like that. That was so wonderful about Bruce Willis and John McClane, is he did run away. He didn't want to fight. It took him a long time to engage. And I think that was an interesting dichotomy of 80s action heroes over the Arnolds and the Stallones, who I love dearly. It was a much different portrayal. And that's what I was trying to do here, add the familiar and then veer left as many times as I could.
Yeah, yeah. So when is book 2 due out?
It's slated to be released April 17th, 2025.
Okay.
I'm in the midst of writing it right now.
You're not, okay. So there's a little wait. Have you got a book cover yet?
No, but the primary plot concerns Jolon Winterhawk's daughter. And so I do have a description for David about what Chinoa is, and it takes place 30 years after this book. So it's quite a bit further. So she's almost 40. She's on her own adventure. She's an Armenian Indian scout for the Army Corps of Engineers.
Okay.
And the backstory of this one is in 1902, President Roosevelt did the Land Act, and he authorized the Army Corps of Engineers to create dams in Oregon to irrigate the eastern part of the state. And unfortunately, tribes were displaced again, including the Nez Perce. So she is acting as a proxy representative of her tribe to make sure things are done correctly this time, if you will, and to honor her father's service as well. So
okay, well, that sounds good, and it sounds it's almost generational then.
It is, yeah, and she's a much different character than her father. So she's interesting to write. She has just as much heroism, but she's certainly a different character.
Wow, and this will be interesting. You're writing as a female now.
Yes. Yeah. And I'm allowing more observations and just allowing different things that I probably wouldn't have done with Jolon that she is more in tune with. So yeah.
Is there anybody in your life who's giving you any feedback on any of that?
Well, I'm having my wife starting to read it and my mom. So I'll be getting some feedback pretty soon. Yeah.
I think that a surprising number of authors are able to write from the other perspective. There have been a couple of times when I've read a book that someone has gifted me because of what I do. I get handed books all the time, and I don't necessarily, if there's initials on the front of the cover, I don't have any idea, and I don't really look. And there have been a couple times when I've read a book and said, what? This was a woman? What? This was a guy? Oh my. So yeah. I think, but if you can do that, I like the generational aspect. That's going to keep your readers hooked and going for quite some time. Do you have any idea how many books this will be?
I have an idea for a third one.
Okay.
And I think that should tell enough of the story.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yep.
I mean, this was a standalone in my mind when I
Okay.
wrote it, just to be honest. Like it's a one and done story, but the way the epilogue left, it certainly had room for a sequel, and it was finding just the right direction to go. I didn't want it to be exactly the same.
Yeah.
So I wanted it to be different enough to be an interesting read, but be familiar enough that it's a world that readers want to return to. And now that's been fun to re-enter the world again, but with a different set of eyes, her eyes.
Okay. Is there another project unrelated to this one on the board somewhere?
Yeah, my third book will be just a standalone thriller.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
That's good.
yeah, yeah. So I've
All
already
right.
talked about maybe having that out by 2026. The
Okay.
stand.
And then readers get frustrated and they're like, 2026, 2025, I need it now. Yeah, it takes time. And
Yeah.
then there's the book is out now and I need to sit down and write the next book, but I'm busy doing all the things that happen after a book comes out, which is a lot more than people think. So,
Yeah, the interviews and just getting the word out and the signings and it's all new to me. So each new experience has just been wonderful for me.
yeah,
Yeah.
I just did a teen fiction class and the kids were so impressed that there was an author in their room. And I thought,
Oh,
we're just people with ideas that then we just took the time to write them down. But what got me about the kids was they are really interested in how a person actually sits down and does this. And so when we were talking about the journey, and I had them all convinced that they could all write a book, and then one of them said, "That's great." And then you get a publisher, and then you write the next one. And I said, "No, that's not exactly how it works." I got sad news for you, but I'm not going to tell you until you have a book of your own. Your book is out in a number of ways that people can experience it. You've got it in paperback, hardback, Kindle, and now Audible.
the audiobook is great. Grayson
Yeah.
Bishop is the narrator. From what I understand, it's his first book. And I was able to select the narrator based on some examples I was given, some samples. And boy, he really does a great job.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was really apprehensive about the whole thing because I just hadn't experienced it before. I heard some other authors didn't have a great time, and mine has just been great. I think he did a flawless job. He's very dramatic. He sells the terror. He sells the heroism.
Yeah.
He just
There's a sample on Amazon, and I thought it was very good. And I do think that that's a scary thing for authors. Either the Audible, and then of course the next one is if you're lucky enough to have it turn into a movie. And there's always that translation, and it doesn't always go according to the way, especially hard fans think. So if the Audible is really good, and it sounds good to me, I've read the book and I've actually started listening to the Audible, and I thought, yeah, no, I could see having experienced the book this way from the start. So yeah.
Oh, that's nice. Thank you.
No, he does a very good job. So, and what was it like for you to hear someone else reading your book? I know we all usually either have to read sections of our own book out loud to other people, or I don't know if you use the read aloud, options on AI or on even on Word, but to have somebody sort of enact the book, how was that?
It was great. As you know, the big part of the book is his inner monologue. And I guess that's what I was mostly concerned about, how that would come across to somebody that's not looking at the page, just listening. Could you understand that that was his inner monologue? And to me, he really pulled that off.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then the different characters, and he just did a great job. I wasn't expecting all the voices and the accents, and he really took his time, and I was more than happy. More
Yeah.
than happy with the finished product.
Yeah. And that's something that if I'm going to recommend a book to somebody and it's available on Audible, if there is an audio sample, I'll listen to it before I recommend it, because there have been times when I know the book's available and everybody wants to experience the book that way, if they are busy, it's easier to just plug in and you can still vacuum or drive or whatever you need to do.
Sure.
But on the other hand, if it's not the right narrator, it doesn't always end up being a good thing. So, yeah.
That's right.
Well, Dave, is there a question I have not asked that you wish that I had asked?
Kat, I can't think of one. You've covered everything. You've done such a good job.
I'll have to have you back for book 2.
Okay.
Because you have a fan base. I don't know if I made this clear from the beginning, but I started this because I used to do publicity for authors, and people know that I know authors, but of course they think I know people like Stephen King and, and so they think that I can just approach anyone. But what ends up happening is they are unable to get to a book signing or an event, and they would like to know what you're like. So I started doing this, and so yeah, it's been great. But I no longer have, in very short order, this only started in June, but in very short order, I stopped being allowed to pick the authors I would like to interview. I don't even know how these people found me, but I started getting email from readers.
Wow.
Saying your next one needs to be this. So now I have a list of authors that I'm asking because they've been requested. So that's nice to know that you've been requested.
So nice. And it's very, very wonderful that readers have asked for you to interview me. That was wonderful. So thank you.
It's funny. Well, sorry. It's been an honor and a pleasure. And I want to thank you for making the time. Readers, as always, I'll post the links below so you can find Dave, his books, stay up to date on his latest passion projects, and maybe catch him at a signing or a speaking engagement. Also, if you like the book, please don't forget to leave a review or at least some stars. It's the book version of like and subscribe. And many of you are telling me that you didn't know this before. You can follow your favorite authors on Amazon. So just like your favorite YouTube channels, you'll get a notification when there's something new to view. Dave, thanks again. It was so enjoyable, and I hope to see you soon.
Thank you, Kat. Have a good day.
You too.